So welcome to MKTG 612 Brand Management, right? This is our third session, and in today's session, we will be looking at brand resonance and the brand value. This morning, dear. I think it's the rain. I'm convinced. All right, so let's take it again. So welcome to MKTG 612 Brand Management. This is our third session, and in today's session, we will be looking at brand resonance and the brand value chain. Now, this is a follow-up or a continuation, if you may, from what we discussed last week regarding customer-based brand equity and the CBBE model. Now, you remember I briefly introduced the CBBE model and mentioned that we were going to go into deeper detail regarding that model in today's session. So that is what we are going to do today. So as usual, there are certain learning outcomes that we hope to achieve once the session is completed. And these include, one, to be able to define what brand resonance is about, which is usually the ultimate aim for every form of branding activity that a firm would usually engage in. And then you will also be able to understand the steps that are involved in building brand resonance, which, like I said, is the ultimate aim for every firm's brand building activity. And to be able to attain brand resonance, there are certain building blocks that the firm has to put in place in order to get to the ultimate, which is brand resonance. So we will understand all these building blocks and how they culminate in the creation of brand resonance. You will also be able to define the brand value chain and the different stages in the brand value chain, right? So these are the four main learning outcomes that will be achieved once the session is through. So let's get into it. Starting from what it entails to build a strong brand. Now, like I said, brand resonance is the ultimate aim for every firm that engages in any form of brand building activity. Meaning that if a firm wants to be able to build a strong, resilient brand that can be able to withstand the pressures of competition in their sector, they should think about achieving brand resonance ultimately at the end of their brand building activities. So when we talk about brand building, it basically involves the creation of intense, active loyalty relationships with customers. Because remember, we talked about the fact that brands reside in the minds and the hearts of consumers. Do you remember we said that?
Yes, Doc.
Good. So to be able to ensure that the firm is able to build a strong brand, they have to make sure that their relationship with their customers is strong. And that is why we are saying building strong brands involves the creation of some form of intense and active loyalty relationship with the firm's customers. So to achieve this aim, marketers would usually utilize what we refer to as the brand resonance model, also known as the customer-based brand equity model, given that all the activities aimed at building brand resonance in this brand resonance model are geared towards creating this intense, active loyalty relationship that we are talking about. So when we say brand resonance model, it's synonymous with the customer-based brand equity model. They are one and the same. So this brand resonance model we are talking about, also known as the CBBE model, considers how brand positioning affects what the customers think, what they feel, what they do, and the degree to which they connect with a given brand. So when it comes to the brand resonance model, every brand building activity that the firm engages in is mainly to influence how the customers think, feel, and act when it comes to their brand. And you'll realize that a lot of brands who have been able to master this art of building their brands, almost achieving brand resonance, and others having achieved brand resonance, are able to have this differential effect on their customers in terms of the way they think and feel and the actions that they take when it comes to choosing that brand over other competing brands in the same category, right? So building a strong brand is synonymous with achieving brand resonance. because without working towards achieving brand resonance, the firm will not be able to build a brand that is strong enough to withstand the pressures of competition from other brands in their sector. So with that being said, the brand resonance model, like I mentioned, is the same as the CBBE model and is made up of several layers, also referred to as the brand building blocks. Now, these are arranged in the form of a pyramid, right? Starting from the base all the way to the apex. Now, remember I talked about the fact that resonance is the ultimate aim of every firm's brand building activity. So you will observe from the diagram that resonance is at the apex of the pyramid, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Good.
Yes,
though. Other building blocks at the base leading up to resonance, meaning that without going through these building blocks at the base of the pyramid and working your way up as a brand, there is no way that you will be able to achieve resonance. So it is a must that any firm that is aiming towards building resonance or achieving resonance through their brand building activities must begin all the way at the bottom of the pyramid with what we refer to as salience, and then working their way up through performance and imagery, and then impacting judgments and feelings, and then ultimately achieving resonance. Now you realize that on the extremes of the pyramid, we have different sets of elements. On the left, we have a set of elements referring to the stages of brand development. And these are arranged again, moving from bottom to top, isn't it?
Yes, though.
Good. Emphasizing what we just talked about in reference to resonance being the ultimate, which involves building a strong, intense loyalty relationship between a brand and its customers. So you will notice that starting from the bottom, from salience and working their way up through the various building blocks in between, including performance, imagery, judgment, and feelings, firms have the arduous task of creating first an identity for themselves when they are going through brand development, and then creating some form of meaning with their target customer base, and then trying to elicit some response based on the meaning that they have created. And then based on that response, they will go ahead and try to forge this intense active loyalty relationship that we are talking about. So on the extreme right of the pyramid, we can see that through each of the stages of brand development, there are certain branding objectives that the firm has to seek to achieve at each stage. And from the bottom of the pyramid moving up, as we have been discussing, from the point of salience, the firm has to focus on building a deep, broad brand awareness, and then move on towards creating certain points of parity and points of difference by building certain performance and imagery elements, and then ultimately influencing the judgments of feelings of consumers to be able to get positive and accessible reactions from them. And then by the time they are able to do all these things, they will have a clear path towards building this intense active loyalty relationship in the form of brand resonance. So significant brand equity can only come about for any firm if they are able to successively move through each of these stages from the bottom of the pyramid and get all the way to the apex of the pyramid where we can see resonance, which is the end goal for all these brand building and brand development activities that the firm is engaging in. So with that understanding, what are we saying? We are saying that the brand resonance model is basically a sequence of steps moving in the shape of a pyramid from the broad base all the way to the top. And with what we have discussed so far, we have also been able to ascertain that the achievement of each of the subsequent stages as the firm moves up this pyramid is contingent upon how well they are able to successfully clear each of the levels from the base of the pyramid on their way up. So like we talked about, there are 4 steps involved in building this brand resonance. And it starts from the bottom of the pyramid where the firm is trying to ensure identification of their brand with customers. And they're also trying to make sure that the customers form some kind of association in their minds to this brand of theirs with a specific product class, a specific product benefit or customer need. Because without this association, there's no way that the brand will be able to come up in the mind of the customer when they have a particular need that has to be satisfied or a problem that needs to be solved. Now, once the firm is able to ensure their identification, they can then move on to try and establish some kind of brand meaning in the minds of consumers. So this is where they strategically try to link their brand with a host of tangible and intangible brand associations. And here you see firms try to use integrated marketing communication activities to build most of this brand meaning that we are talking about. And once they are able to successfully create this meaning, they will go ahead to try and elicit some customer responses as a result of this meaning that they have created. And once these responses are obtained, they can be able to convert them to create brand resonance, because without a response, there's nothing to build on in terms of creating this relationship with the customer. There has to be some initial contact or response before a subsequent relationship can develop or build, isn't it?
Yes, though.
Yeah, it's like in real life. I know a lot of guys and girls who have been dating people in their minds for a very long time. They've never made a move, not once. But in their minds, they are dating the people. This is a typical example. You have to make a move, right, to be able to get a response before you can build upon it and say that, okay, now we are engaging, now we are in a relationship. You can't do it in your mind. And it's the same thing when we are building brand equity. Alimatu, are you saying something? Your line is breaking, so we can't hear you. Alimatu, please check your connection.
Isaac is attacking Lawrence.
Oh, okay. Don't mind Isaac. Isaac, your time will come. Clancy, what if your crush doesn't know you exist? That is why you have to create an identity for yourself and then create some kind of meaning so that you can get noticed and then make a move to get some kind of response.
Oh, Dr. Sheena, by then Robert Downey Jr. will be old, though.
That's a good one. Manaf, please go ahead. Your hand is up.
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Manaf.
Please, I want to know if there's a difference between the CBBE model and the brand resonance model.
Okay, your colleagues will answer you right now because I said it like 3 times. Can someone answer Manaf for me?
Yes, they are the same.
Manaf, have you got your answer?
Yes, Doc.
Good. So they are the same because, like I mentioned, the brand resonance model is basically the model that is used to build this intense active loyalty relationship with the customer, right? So the customer-based brand equity model is aimed at achieving this resonance, and the steps are the same. So they are synonymous with each other. Great. So with our understanding of the CBB model, also known as the brand resonance model, and the 4 steps of brand building, let's delve into the basic questions that the firm has to be asking themselves as they go through these basic stages of development. We talked about it briefly a moment ago, but I want us to be able to highlight them once again as we go ahead and break down the building blocks step by step, starting from the base of the pyramid. So we talked about the fact that in their brand development activities, the firm has to move through several stages. And there are 4 of these stages that involves the firm asking themselves some strategic questions. And this is because these questions that they have to ask themselves are basically the questions that the customers will be asking themselves when they receive any kind of communication from this intended brand that we are talking about. So the questions that they will be asking themselves, sometimes they don't ask these questions explicitly. Sometimes they do it implicitly in their minds, right? And it usually starts from this question of, who are you? Don't we ask ourselves this question all the time when we see a new product with a name that we don't know? We ask, what is this product? Who are these people who produce this product? Isn't it?
Yes, Doc.
Yeah. So that is why the firm has to ask themselves this question. And to answer this question, they have to go about creating a brand identity for themselves. And once they are able to create an identity so that people will know who they are, the next question is to be able to talk about what they are. So what meaning should the customer bring to the consumption situation of this particular brand? What does the brand stand for? What does it entail to create this particular brand of product, right? And then once they are able to create that meaning in the mind of the customer, the next thing to do is to try and get a response, because it's not enough for the customer to know your brand and to be able to understand what your brand is about. It's about your customer being able to give a response to your brand that you are expecting. And these responses usually come in various forms. It could come in the form of making an actual purchase, doing some form of word of mouth, among other things. So here the marketer simply wants to answer the questions, what about you? And this what about you is a question that the customer would usually ask when they are faced with several competing brands. And you want their answer to that question to end up in you being the preferred choice out of the lot. Because once they ask what about you, the next question they will ask is, what do I think or feel about you? And how a customer usually thinks or feels about a brand is what usually influences their final decision on whether to purchase this particular brand of product or talk about it or recommend it to someone, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Good.
Yes.
The marketer has to make sure that the answer to these questions above all should result in these brand responses we are talking about, because without a response, there is no means of earning this revenue that we are talking about and guaranteeing demand for the brand of product or service that we are dealing in, right? So once we do this, ultimately, we need to think about, okay, how do we sustain these brand responses? And here we are referring to the positive brand responses. And the questions we will usually ask in regard to these brand responses and sustaining them through building brand relationships is, what about you and me? You referring to the brand and me referring to the customer, because the customer wants to understand whether they are in it together with the brand or they are on their own. So you realize that a lot of brands in their communication try to emphasize the fact that they are a partnership or they are in partnership with their customers, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes,
And that
please.
is because they want to emphasize this brand relationship we are talking about, so that the customer can be able to appreciate that the brand thinks of them as a partner, as a companion, and is willing to go the long haul with them. And therefore, they should not switch from them to any other competing brand. But once they answer that question, the customer will also go ahead and ask themselves what kind of association and how much of a connection they would like to have with these particular brands. And you realize that some customers have such a strong relationship with certain brands that it is sometimes considered unhealthy, especially where some of these brands have to do with people, like Clancy and Robert Downey. It's an unhealthy connection. Apart from the fact that it is one-sided and it is in one person's head, the other person has no idea that this connection or relationship even exists.
See, very harmful.
Right? But on a more serious note, you will realize that some people are so attached and connected and associated with certain brands that if they have a need for a product in a particular category and that brand is not available, they would rather suffer without the product than buy a competing brand. You know anybody like that? You know anybody like that who is so attached to a particular brand, if they go to the shop and that brand is not there, they would wait until that brand is back in stock?
Naomi is one of them.
Naomi, which brand is that? Which brand do you have this close association with? They are messing with you again, eh? Don't mind them.
Yes.
Don't mind them, Naomi. Isaac, iPhone users, are you sure? Could be. They will hold on to the old model they have until they can afford to buy a newer model. I've seen some people like that. They are so attached to the iPhone. So Isaac, that's a good example. I think there's a question here. Leilati, you were asking how does it become unhealthy?
Yes, madam.
In terms of the celebrities?
No, in terms of being so attached to a brand.
Oh, I was talking, okay, so being so attached to a brand becomes unhealthy when that brand begins to have certain detrimental effects on your life, but you are still hooked onto it. Does it make sense?
Yes,
Doc, please, I thought that was the essence of brand loyalty.
Yes, but when brand loyalty becomes harmful to the consumer, then we have a problem. It's like the unhealthy addiction that people have to certain prescription medication. Remember, we talked about different kinds of demand. Was it in this class that we talked about the different forms of demand?
No, Joe.
Okay, then I think it was the MBA class. I teach them marketing management. I think that's what we talked about it. So there's a kind of demand that is called negative demand, right? And it's usually an unhealthy liking for something. And people usually become very strongly attached to it. Right? So in terms of these different, let me quickly go to the slide and then show you these different types of demand. I think it will make your understanding of this clearer, okay? So just give me a moment. Yes. Let me quickly go to those slides and then we can talk about the different kinds of demand so that it will make what we are talking about clearer. Okay. I'm sharing the screen now. I didn't want to assume because they are such that you can easily confuse them. Please, can you see the screen?
Yes, Joe.
Yes,
Okay. So, like I said, there are different states of demand, right? And like I mentioned, demand usually becomes unhealthy when it has to do with certain products that have a detrimental effect on the consumer. Now, the two main kinds of demand that usually have a detrimental effect on the consumer include negative demand and unwholesome demand, right? So when this kind of brand relationship that we are talking about becomes unhealthy, it is usually in regard to consumers' unwholesome demand for certain kinds of brands of products and service. So let's talk about the different states of demand, and then we will go ahead and explain this into more detail. Starting from the concept of negative demand. So here, consumers dislike the product or service in question so much that they may pay to avoid it, right? But that doesn't mean that they do not need it. They may need this product at certain times, but they would rather not have it. Am I making sense?
Yes, please.
So
Yes,
a typical example is surgery. People would want to live a healthy lifestyle so that they can avoid having to go into surgery. Do you agree?
Yes, please. Yes, Joe.
So if they want to avoid surgery for, say, heart disease, they would pay to get products to maintain a healthy lifestyle so that their hearts will be strong and they will not have to go into surgery. Another example is dentistry. No one wants to go to the dentist and have their teeth taken out because they are rotting away, isn't it?
Yes.
So they'll spend money to buy toothpaste and buy floss and mouthwash just to make sure that their teeth stay clean and healthy, and you do not have to end up in the dentist chair to have their teeth taken out. Those are two typical examples of negative demand. Now, let's talk about the next one, which is non-existent demand. And this is where consumers are unaware of or uninterested in the product. And this is the main problem that a brand will have if they are not able to create an identity for themselves, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because if they do not know about you, they do not know who you are, they will not be able to even show any interest or even have a need to purchase your brand, given that they do not know that you even exist and they do not know that your product has the ability to provide a solution to whatever problem they may have, right? So to solve this problem of non-existent demand, firms usually have to answer the questions we are talking about in the order that we mentioned, starting from who they are and what they are. The next kind of demand we can talk about is latent demand. And this is where consumers may share a strong need that cannot be satisfied by any existing product. So the consumers have a need, but there's no product currently that can fully satisfy that need that they have. Right? And this is where marketers usually find opportunities from time to time, because it means that they have the ability to provide a solution that can be able to elicit demand or elicit some kind of response from the consumer base, right? So let me throw this question to the class. Is there any need that you currently have that there's no product that can satisfy? Can anyone mention any such need that you have, that there's no product that can satisfy it? Anyone? Bafo, yeah.
Anti-aging.
Very good. I was waiting for the ladies to tell me that. I wanted to hear it from the ladies. I was very surprised they didn't say anything.
But Doc, there are some products that people actually take to prevent them from aging quickly.
Yeah, but there's no way of stopping the aging process.
Okay.
Do you get it? Yeah. There's no way of stopping it. You can try and do things to, like you said, slow it down or manage it, or even that. You will still age. Right? Immortality only exists in the movies and in the animations and the video games that we have been consuming. Right? So aging, very well said, Bafo. That's the number one thing, yes, or death, because people age and then over time they die. And that's one of the main needs that people have that they've not been able to find a product to satisfy. So good one there, right? Another type of demand we can talk about is declining demand. And this usually happens when consumers begin to buy less of a product less frequently, right? Or they stop buying the product altogether. And this is because either the marketing of the product has slowed down, or the product has reached a maturity stage and it is in the process of decline, where there are better alternatives, right? Or more well-marketed alternatives from other competing brands, right? Now, aside this, we can also talk about irregular demand. And this one is where purchases usually vary on a seasonal, monthly, weekly, daily, or even hourly basis. Right? And this is another common one. So we have a lot of seasonal products that are on sale currently. Then we can also talk about full demand, where consumers are adequately buying all the product that is put on the marketplace. So this is actually the epitome of what the marketer is looking for when they are aiming towards building brand resonance. Because once there's a relationship, anything that you put out there, your customers are receptive to it and they are willing to buy all of it from the marketplace. right? So essentially we can say full demand is one of the benefits of building brand resonance. Then we can talk about over full demand, which could also result from building brand resonance, because then it means that your relationship with your customers is so strong that you cannot even provide enough to satisfy all the needs. However, there is unwholesome demand, where consumers are attracted to these products that have undesirable social consequences, right? So Leilatu, like we mentioned, it becomes unhealthy when the customer develops a strong relationship or association with one of these unwholesome products that have undesirable social consequences. Like, yes, Clancy, very good. Alcohol, cigarettes. These unhealthy relationships in the minds of people with celebrities and famous people usually ends up in stalking and the committing of crimes, which end up getting these people sometimes imprisoned, right? Okay, great, Leilati, you get it now. Awesome, right? So unwholesome demand is usually how these
Dr. Boateng,
things end up getting unhealthy. Yes.
please, Isaac wrote bad women. Please, I want him to explain.
No, it's not Isaac, it's Alimatu who wrote it actually.
No, Isaac wrote it first. Cigarettes,
Isaac.
bad women. So I'm lost. Please, can he
Isaac,
explain?
Why did you say bad women? Okay, Alimatu was saying, hey, bad women, pal. Okay, Manaf is trying to explain. He's saying being too attached to your girlfriend is also unhealthy. Okay, but that doesn't explain the bad women. Isaac, please clarify. Okay, he has retracted. He has retracted, Clancy. He's retracted. Clancy, do you accept the retraction?
Oh, I still want the explanation.
Isaac, you can't get out of
Hey,
this.
class.
Isaac, you can't get out of this one. No, you have to explain. So please just proffer a short explanation, because I'm sure it came from someplace. Manaf is trying to help you out. He said you will easily get broken heart.
I don't agree.
Yeah, because technically someone may view a person they are in a relationship with to be bad, but in a relationship with another person, that person ends up being very good. So that becomes the question, whose fault was it? Who was making who look bad? So it's very subjective, Isaac, and in that regard, you can't say bad women or bad men.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe bad relationship, but
exactly,
not
maybe a
necessarily
bad
gender.
relationship, like we are talking about,
Yeah.
unwholesome demand. Some people are dynamite together. When they are together, it's very poisonous. But when they split up and they are with other people, it's fantastic. Right? So let's leave it at that. Hey, Mida, toxic fire. It seems you are talking from experience. Papa, your hand
No,
is
madam.
up. Papa, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
That's not. Please, with the wholesome demand
Yeah.
for how would
We mean unwholesome. You mean unwholesome.
unwholesome
Yeah.
demand, how would the manufacturer manage it?
Okay. So in the past, most of the manufacturers who produce these products that have unwholesome demand were known to not take any course of action to protect consumers. And therefore, governments and legal institutions had to step in to force them to take action to protect consumers. So you realize that it started with the cigarette manufacturers who were mandated by law to issue disclaimers and to warn consumers about the undesirable effects of consuming cigarettes. Please, do we remember that?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
And they went ahead to ban all forms of advertisements for cigarettes. So in Ghana here, you can't advertise cigarettes. And they are trying to do the same for alcohol. Currently, they have only banned people of influence from advertising it or featuring in adverts. However, from what we heard from the legal counsel of the FDA, the ultimate aim is to ban the advertising of alcohol altogether in Ghana. So, therefore, this is one of the ways that they do it. Good. And then the fetish priests on television. Good. NCA went ahead to take necessary steps to stop these people from advertising on these TV stations and misleading members of the general public, right? So, Bafo, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, Doc.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As you know, marketers can be selfish sometimes, especially when there is full demand. So once they are making their revenue, they sometimes tend to forget the welfare of the consumers that they are serving. Okay, so back to our lecture. So let's now go into the 6 brand building blocks, which we discussed a moment ago in terms of the shape of the pyramid, starting from the bottom and then working our way successively through the different stages all the way to the top. So we will begin by discussing brand salience, then we will talk about brand imagery and brand performance, then we'll go through brand judgments and feelings, and then we'll end up with customer resonance. So when we talk about brand salience, it basically measures the awareness of the brand and how easily and how often the brand is evoked under various situations or circumstances. So like we mentioned, the brand has to have an identity such that the customer is able to pull the brand from their minds whenever they have a need for a product or service in that particular category that the brand is featured in. So here, the questions that the firm would want to usually answer are, to what extent is their brand top of mind? And how easily can it be recalled or recognized in a purchase and consumption situation? And you will notice that in one of our sessions, I think from last week, we were able to use basic cues of certain brands to evoke the names of those brands from the minds of consumers, isn't it?
Yes.
True.
Meaning that those brands had done a good job of building brand salience. So when it comes to brand salience, the ultimate objective for any brand is to create the depth and awareness that will make them top of mind and make them easy to recall and revoke in any purchase and consumption situation. And this starts first of all by creating a good breadth of awareness for their brand, meaning that they have to be able to create a range of purchase and usage situations in which their brand element will come to mind. So you realize that in advertising their brand through marketing communication, firms will always want to emphasize in what situations their brands are relevant, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. So in almost every advert that has to do with rice in Ghana here, it is about the family being around the dining table, all smiles, eating a range of dishes prepared with this rice, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, Doc.
So this is clearly communicating the breadth of their brand by talking about the fact that it is relevant in family situations and it is relevant for the preparation of all these different dishes that are being served in this particular advert that we are watching. Again, the depth of awareness should be enhanced such that the firm has to be able to enhance the extent to which their brand elements come to mind and can be easily recalled or recognized. And this sometimes involves repeatedly advertising their brand such that it is consistently placed in the face of the consumer, so that the consumer will always have their brand elements in their mind, which will make it very easy to recall and recognize, right? And there are brands who have done very well at creating this depth of awareness in addition to the breadth of awareness that we talked about. And also, they have to be able to create a good product category structure for themselves, so that based on how the product categories are structured in the consumer's mind, they will be able to place themselves in the right category to be able to be recalled and recognized at the right time in any purchase and consumption situation. So to highlight this issue of product category structure, let's look a bit closer at it and look at how the product category structure is designed. Now, product category structure comes to mind because marketers believe that in the consumer's mind, products are arranged in groups with varying levels of specificity, right? So they group them in their minds as and when they need products or services from that category to be able to make it easier for them to evoke. And they would usually do this grouping in the form of a hierarchy, such that they will start the hierarchy by having a product class, which will be at the highest level. And then they will come down to a second level, which will have the product category information. And then it will go down further to the product type information. And then ultimately end up with brand information. Because customers would usually begin searching for a particular brand of product or service to satisfy a need once they find themselves in a situation that they want to solve or a need that they want to have satisfied. True or false?
True, Doc.
True.
Good. So usually that need that they have, that they want satisfied, or that product that they want a solution to, would have to be solved using a particular product class or product category. And that is why the hierarchy begins with the product class and category, following through to the product type, and then ending with the brand. So let's look at a typical example of such categorization in the form of beverages. Now, usually when a customer identifies the need to have a beverage, it is usually because they are thirsty, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Good. So beverages will be the product class that will be able to help them satisfy their thirst. Now, to be able to satisfy their thirst, they need to determine the category of beverage that they need to satisfy their thirst. And it's not always that people are thirsty that they want to drink water, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. They may sometimes want something flavored. So the product category that they have to choose from is whether they want water or they want something that is flavored. And once they're able to determine which of the two, assuming they go for flavored, they now have to go a step further to determine which kind of flavored water they want, whether they want an alcoholic one or a non-alcoholic one, right? And that is the product category again, because alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages can also be put into different categories, isn't it?
Yes, Doc.
Good. Yeah. So within those categories, they need to decide which one they want. If they go for non-alcoholic, then they now have to go down to go to product type. And when it comes to non-alcoholic beverages, we have so many. We have juices, milk, soft drinks, we have tea. There are a bazillion different types of tea, depending on which part of the world you are coming from. Again, when it comes to alcoholic beverages, there are so many different forms, right? And within these, yes. Good. And within these product types, we have several brands. And as soft drink alone, we can mention so many different brands. Examples of soft drink brands in Ghana.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola, Fanta, Sprite.
Belmont.
Belmont, good. We can talk about special drinks, royal drinks. These are all soft drinks, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So this is how these product category structures are designed in the minds of consumers. And whenever they have a need, they go through each of these stages, depending on the product category they have the need in, to be able to wind down at the particular brand that they want to purchase to satisfy that need. Now, we do not realize that this is happening because the human brain is such a fantastic tool. It is able to do all these in a split second, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Good. So when you're thirsty and you walk into a shop and you want to buy a beverage, within a split second, you can decide whether you want water or a drink, and you can decide whether it should be alcoholic or non-alcoholic. You can decide the specific product type and that whether alcoholic or non-alcoholic, and then ultimately end up with the specific brand that you want. It is on rare occasions that you will find people standing in front of a fridge or in front of a shelf in a particular product category, trying to decide which one to pick over the other. But that does happen from time to time, especially where they have an affinity for two brands in the same category. And I'm sure people in this class have experienced that before. Haven't you? Are you there?
Doc,
We
please,
are
we are
dog.
here.
Okay, good, good. Great. So Isaac is saying in terms of choice of phone, Samsung versus iPhone. Okay. And that is if the Samsung and the iPhone are all within your means at that point in time. Right, Isaac?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Right. So that's a good example. So that is for brand salience, right? And once the firm is able to create an identity for themselves such that the customer is able to establish these unique associations we are talking about as a result of the depth and breadth of awareness, and then the firm making sure that they have unique associations that place them in the customer's product category structure, they can now move on to emphasize their performance, because it is not enough for the customer to know who you are. You have to know what you are, meaning what you can do as a brand in that particular product or service category. So that brings us to the next stage of the brand building blocks, which is brand performance. And here we are basically trying to describe how well this particular brand of product or service performs over those of competing brands. And here it's about not just meeting customers' functional needs, but also rating very highly on objective assessments of quality as a brand, and also being able to satisfy both utilitarian and aesthetic, as well as economic customer needs and wants in that product or service category. Now, let me mention that when it comes to utilitarian, aesthetic, and economic customer needs, they usually have varying importance depending on the type of customer that you are talking about. That is why when it comes to the purchase of cell phones, you realize that people still use basic feature phones. Are you aware?
Yes, please.
Good, because to them, it's not about aesthetics. Sometimes it's just about the utilitarian value or the economic value of the device. So as long as it can make and receive calls and it is very affordable, they will go for it. Some individuals do try to emphasize aesthetics. So the phone has to be very flashy. They don't care if it is not utilitarian or not very economic. As long as it satisfies their need for aesthetics, they are okay. So we need to bear in mind that when it comes to brand performance, different aspects of performance are of relevance to different levels or types of customer. That is why it is very important for you as a firm to go through the STP process, being to segment, target, and position yourself in the marketplace. Because without going through the STP process, you will not be able to be fully aware of the characteristics of the customer groups that you are serving. And you need that knowledge to be able to know which aspects of your brand performance to highlight in your communication, depending on which customer segment you are serving and when you are communicating with them. Please, I hope that makes sense.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
Good. So with that being said, brand performance transcends the product's ingredients and features, and basically delves into the area of the dimensions that will help to differentiate the brand from its competition. So in as much as the ingredients and the features of the brand can differentiate it from competition, there is the likelihood that these ingredients and features can be easily replicated based on the concept of points of parity, isn't it?
Yes,
Good.
please.
So brand performance relies heavily not just on point of parity, but also on points of difference. where they have some kind of performance advantage over their competition. That is why we cannot directly compare a Mercedes-Benz with a Toyota, can we?
No.
No, though.
Exactly.
Please.
Because in terms of performance, the difference is clear. And because of that, it is rare that a brand can overcome severe performance differences, because if you are not able to perform well, your ability to stand out from the competition is very limited and can end up being your undoing. How many of you remember the Tico car?
Doc, I do.
I do.
Good. It had a lot of performance deficiencies, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that in large part accounted for its demise.
Doc, it's still available. It's still around, though.
Tico.
Yes, when you go
Yeah,
to
around
Nkoko,
Kwewu.
when you go to Nkoko, they are
Yeah.
there plenty.
In those parts of the world.
Yeah, they normally climb the mountain.
Good. Right? But you realize that they have been able to find a unique use for it, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. But on a global scale, when you move more into the cities and the urban areas, you will rarely see them, isn't it?
True.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right? So performance is very important as a brand. You have to be able to convince your customer that in terms of performance, you are better than all others. Right? So what are some of the attributes of brand performance that marketers need to look into? The first one they have to pay attention to is the primary ingredients and the supplementary features. Because if the primary ingredients are not there and the supplementary features are also not there, the brand will be fundamentally lacking in terms of even satisfying the most basic customer needs. So primary ingredients and supplementary features should be the first point of call when it comes to brand performance. Next, it should be about product reliability, durability, and serviceability. Right? Customers should be able to count on the products to deliver on its promise, and for it to be durable enough for them to be able to use it for a significant amount of time before they require a replacement. And serviceability, such that they should be able to afford to be able to service this particular product or service that they are consuming for the foreseeable amount of time that they need it to satisfy this need that they have, right? Currently, in the UK, they are trying to get a law passed to enable consumers to independently service their own equipment. So they are trying to pass the law to mandate companies to be able to give customers spare parts to repair their own equipment. So if that law is successfully passed, as a customer, you can request spare parts to fix your own laptop, to fix your own car from the manufacturer. Right? But this is going to create a whole host of problems, given that most consumers will now fancy themselves as experts when it comes to the repair of these equipment. And you'll bear with me that a lot of these equipment are not just basic equipment that consumers need to go tinkering with.
True.
Right? And that will also give manufacturers the ability to take away warranties and guarantees. Because if you say we should allow them to fix it themselves, there's no use to give them a warranty, is there?
No.
Yeah. And that will make those consumers who do not fancy themselves experts at DIY and fixing things to suffer. Because a lot of them rely on these warranties to ensure that their equipment remains serviceable. Right? But the discussion is still going on. The law is yet to be passed. So let's see what happens. But that is an example of serviceability, right? When it comes to brand performance. Again, beyond the reliability, durability, and serviceability, brand performance should also have attributes that include service effectiveness, efficiency, and empathy. Because you realize that even with the sale of products, there is some element of service delivery that comes with it, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Good. So we have to ensure that the service delivery that comes with the product, or if it's an actual service, the employees who are delivering these services are effective and efficient and show empathy when it comes to the delivery of these services or the sale of these products, right? And once these have been guaranteed, we can talk about style and design, which, like I said, is sometimes a do or die for certain customers. The product may be able to perform at the basic level of being functional and giving high levels of utility. But if the product is not stylish enough and it's not very well designed, consumers will never go for it. Now, there are some cars that are very reliable, durable, serviceable, but they are not stylish in terms of design. So people do not usually purchase them. Are you aware? Are you aware?
Yes, Doc.
Yeah, people don't respect them because they are not stylish in terms of design. Can anyone give an example of such a vehicle? Any example of such cars? Where are the car enthusiasts?
I do not like the G-Wagon.
Exactly.
Doc, can we
Don't
say
like the
Opel?
shape at all.
Thank you.
Please, G-Wagon is not bought based on style. It's based on performance.
Exactly.
But there are
So we
people
don't
who
like the
there are
style.
people who can
It's
afford
a beast on the road.
yeah,
We
but
know that.
there are people who can afford a G-Wagon who will not buy it because it's not stylish enough.
Like myself.
Thank you, Mida.
I know some people who have gone for a Range Rover instead.
Even
Exactly.
the Range
Because
Rover,
of
the
the
newer
style.
models are nicer than the old ones.
The old
they look
ones,
too
exactly.
bulky.
You Bob.
So this proves my assertion that I made earlier about the fact that different dimensions appeal to different customers. You remember I said that?
Yeah, Doc.
So Bafo will overlook style and design because he is going for performance. So reliability.
Doc, actually, Doc, I'll choose the Range over the G-Wagon.
Can you imagine? So why were you making
And
that?
why are you defending them?
Bafo,
Bafo.
It was by the way. That car is not beautiful. It's just a metal box.
but you know, currently it is one of the most expensive cars to buy used, especially in the US.
Yes, Doc.
Good.
Yes, Doc.
So, in actual fact, like you are saying, there are people who want it despite the style and design that puts other people off. Right? Very interesting. And that brings us to the next attribute, which is price. And people are buying G-Wagons used, not brand new, more expensive than other cars that they could have bought brand new at the same price, because they are after this performance that we are talking about. Right? Ipia says the Opel car. I haven't even seen one in Ghana in a very long time.
Oh, there are lots on Legon campus for taxis.
Who uses them?
The taxi
Please don't
drivers
shame my
around.
father's first car. Thank
Hey, we are sorry.
you. Opel Vectra, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so you see, it's the veterans. It's the veterans. My father uses an Opel, by the way. So
See?
an Opel station wagon. He's had it for about 8 years.
Please take your words back, people.
Yeah. Oh no. It emphasizes once again what I said regarding the differences in taste and preference, which influences which aspects of the brand appeal to a particular customer, right? So as marketers, we always need to bear this in mind. That is why the STP process is so important, because without dividing the market into these people who share these characteristics in common, our marketing communications will not be able to be as effective and targeted as we want it to be. Right? So these are the main attributes of brand performance. And if a firm wants to excel when it comes to brand performance, these are the attributes that they have to emphasize. So let's look at a few brands that rank highly on performance, right? And we are going to try to use their category to identify them, right? Because we've talked about product category structure, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. So let's see if they've done enough in terms of performance to help us pick them out. Starting from e-commerce. Which brand stands out? E-commerce.
Jumia.
Let's think global.
Amazon.
Good. Amazon, right? So a no-brainer. Let's do another one. Search engines.
Google.
Yeah. No-brainer. Let's do another one. Safety. Let's talk about car safety.
Volvo.
Volvo.
BMW.
Volvo.
Volvo still holds the title, actually. BMW is more of performance.
Yeah.
But even that, they keep going back and forth with Mercedes-Benz. It's either BMW or Mercedes-Benz in the area of performance. Right, but for safety, it's actually Volvo. Isaac Owusu, when did Bing become prominent in terms of search engines? Even Firefox will come before Bing. Even Firefox and only Opera Mini will come before Bing. You didn't even say Internet Explorer. I say, so you're laughing out loud.
Internet Explorer is that browser you use to download other browsers.
A very good one. Right, so you see, in terms of performance, we are talking about browser self. The winners clearly stand out, right? Okay, so let's do one last one. In terms of innovation, Apple, yeah. Right, Apple. So you realize that it is possible to create these brand performance attributes and get customers to rely on them and use them to position specific brands when it comes to product category. So these things we are talking about in theory have actually been tried and tested in practice, and they work, right? So that is for brand performance. And once you're done with that, you now need to create imagery. And imagery basically refers to the intangible aspects of the brand, which depend on the extrinsic properties of the product or service that you are selling. So consumers can usually form imagery associations either directly from their experiences with the brand of product or service, or indirectly through advertising or other sources of information that they are exposed to, like word of mouth from friends and relatives and other family members, right? So when it comes to imagery, there are 4 main dimensions we can talk about, and we will take these one after the other, starting from user profiles / imagery. So in terms of user profiles, it's all about customers' mental images of the actual users of a product, or the more aspirational or idealized users of a product, right? And these associations can be typically based on demographic and psychographic factors. So for instance, when it comes to demography, certain products are known to be used by a certain kind of gender. For example, when I talk about Venus razor blades, which gender usually uses them? When I say Venus, okay, Venus shaving stick.
Men.
Venus shaving stick by gender.
Women.
Female.
Venus, you can even get the cue from the Venus itself.
Yes. Thank you. People are now using the branding lingo. Very good, Nuruddin. Thank you, Venus. Right? When I say Axe deodorant, by gender?
Male.
Male. Because the Q is even masculine, Axe. Right? And the same goes for age, race, income. You realize that certain products are very common with certain classes of demography. Again, in terms of psychographic factors, you realize that certain products or brands of products are common among certain psychographic groups, like people of a particular career, or people who have certain possessions, or people with certain social issues, or people of a certain political standing, or people who have a certain lifestyle. A typical example is the iPhone. iPhone is known to be used by people who have a particular lifestyle, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Land Cruiser and politicians.
Land Cruiser and politicians.
Exactly. Yes, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So this is user profile at its best, right? Very good example. Good. Now, beyond user profiles, we can also talk about purchase and usage situations. And you realize that certain products and services from specific brands are positioned such that they are used for certain situations. So if that usage situation has not come up, that brand will never come up. A typical example is the Ghanaian marriage industry right now, Ghanaian wedding and engagement industry. Kente has become synonymously associated with certain usage situations. Now, there are certain designers whose names will only come up when you are talking about using Kente for an engagement, including
True.
Imabru.
Festus.
Thank you.
Sadia.
Thank you.
Sadia.
Thank you. Sadia is now trending
Mother
because of
Bertha.
some franchise.
No, Mother Bertha is
daughter,
no
isn't it?
more really loud.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Sadia is the one who is now trending because of the
Yes.
Kranjara wedding, the royal affair.
Because of the creativity.
Good. Right? So that's a typical example of a usage situation. Oh, Isaac, yes, it's a female thing.
Isaac, see us in chambers. We'll tell you about them.
That's why
Yeah.
we are quiet and listening to you guys.
Don't worry.
Now, let's give an example so that the gentleman will find relevant. So, for instance, if it comes to data analysis, that is the only time that we will talk about SPSS, isn't it?
Or SEM.
Or
R.
STEM.
R.
Good. Or R. That is the
Or
only
data.
time that these particular brands will come into mind, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes,
Good. Without having the need to perform data analysis, you will have no reason to be talking about R or M plus or Stata or SPSS or AMOS because the usage situation does not call for it. Right? So are the guys okay now?
Great.
Great. Right? So that is what we mean when we talk about imagery in terms of purchase and usage situations. Good. Next, we can talk about brand personality traits. And this is where certain brands, by virtue of how they are able to create their salience and performance, get to become associated with certain characteristics or traits that are usually associated with human beings. So you realize that when we mention certain aspects of personality, they can be associated to these brands, even though they are not human, right? And according to ACA 1991, there are 5 main dimensions of brand personality, including sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, and ruggedness. Now, let's do a quick exercise and try and see if we can mention specific brands in different categories that fall into these dimensions of brand personality. Now, when we talk about sincerity, in terms of car brands, which brand would you say is sincere? Which car brand would you say is sincere?
Yeah,
BM.
can we say Benz?
Benz or BMW, good, right? Both of them can be said to be sincere because of their performance, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. Now let's talk about excitement. Which brands elicit excitement? Car brand.
Ferrari.
Ferrari, the sports cars, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Good.
Lamborghini.
Lamborghini, they make people excited, right? Because they are daring, they are spirited, they are imaginative with all the interesting designs they are coming up with now for the sports cars. What about competence? What about competence? Brands, car brands that are reliable.
BMW.
Volvo, BMW.
Toyota.
But in Ghana here, if you ask a typical Ghanaian in terms of
Toyota.
competence, Toyota. Thank
Toyota.
you.
Honda.
Land
Honda.
Cruiser.
Hyundai.
Right? So we can mention a lot of brands that have that personality, specifically to the ordinary Ghanaian. What about sophistication?
Benz.
Sophistication.
BMW.
Benz, BMW, right? They are sophisticated. They are upper class.
What about Audi?
Audi, Audi is not as.
Audi follows. Audi is the third.
No, but dog, Audi is also actually good.
Yes, it is, but it depends
personal
on.
Very sophisticated.
Yes, but it depends on the context you are in. In Ghana here, Audi is not very popular in terms of sophistication. In terms of sophistication, someone would mention a Land Cruiser or a Range Rover over Audi. Would you agree?
Yes,
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. Because to them, that is more upper. But when you go to Europe, Audi is on top of their game. With their, I personally like their 4x4s a lot. The Q7, right? I think that is there a Q9? I forgot, but the Audi 4x4s are very sophisticated and very charming. I know about 1 or 2 people in Ghana here who used to use them. Right? Okay, let's do the last one, ruggedness.
G-Wagon.
Mazda.
G-Wagon and Mazda. But in Ghana, yes, Mahindra, yes, Tata Mahindra. The one they bought for the Ghana Prison Service.
Nissan Hardbody.
Yes, the Nissan Hardbody, good. Someone too will put a Toyota Hilux in ruggedness, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then someone too will put Toyota, the regular Toyota. Those who use the Toyota Corolla argue that it is one of the most rugged cars.
It's true.
It's true, huh? I haven't used
Yeah.
one before, so I can't
My mommy
attest, but
had
people-
one. She drove it for like 11 years on a very bad road.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good
It's a hard
confirmation,
car.
leader. Yeah. Right? So very good. So we have been able to clearly identify that indeed, these personality traits can be attributed to specific brands, right? Thereby emphasizing the importance of user imagery and the ability of the brand to be able to create an imagery for themselves in the minds of their target audience, right? We can also talk about brand history and heritage, which is also a semblance of brand imagery. A lot of brands often rely on their history and heritage to create imagery surrounding their products and services. So you will notice that for a lot of brands, as soon as you mention them, their heritage comes to mind. For instance, if I mention Ferrari, what heritage comes to mind?
Italian.
Italian. When I mention GMC, what heritage comes to mind? Good. Isaac says American. GMC is an authentic American car, right? So brands may take on these associations to be able to make sure that they are setting themselves strategically in the mind of the consumer to make it easy for them to be recalled, right? And sometimes these associations are also formed based on customers' experiences. So someone may have had a certain personal experience with a brand, and that is what will make the brand etched in their mind for the foreseeable future, because that experience will be permanently associated with that brand. I know people who hate certain brands of cars because they were in a car accident with that brand of car. And because of that, they associate that brand with misfortune. If you are one of them.
No, dog.
Or you know someone who has that phobia. People have actually associated certain brands with certain experiences in their lives. So you'll find out that they will always never purchase those brands or even recommend those brands because of the experience they have had with those brands. Now, I need to emphasize that these are highly personal and individual, so it will not apply to everybody. Even though there are certain experiences that may also be well known and shared by many people. And this usually happens when brands have very public fallouts, or they engage in very public marketing disasters that affects their ability to have a positive association in the mind of consumers. Well, Francis, you had a problem with the 207. 207 is Benz, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the past, isn't it?
With the accident rate,
yeah,
is alarming.
Exactly. So if someone is going to board the car and it's a 207, they would rather not board it.
Yes. I think so. Most people would not like to join them anymore.
Good. Right? So excellent example, Francis. Yeah. Right? Isaac says Ford buses. I've also heard about Ford buses as well, being another huge accident causer. So people shy away from that brand. If they are going to board the bus and it's a Ford bus, not sit in it. They'll prefer to board another one. Isaac, you said M Plaza Transportation. Oh, is a brand noted for a lot of accidents? I presume so. Isaac, is that the case? Yeah. Clancy also says U-turn buses. So you realize that this issue of brand experience and how it affects imagery is very important. Cancel culture is another space on the internet that is highly fueled by brand experiences. Because one consumer has a negative experience about a brand and it becomes synonymous with the brand name, such that everywhere the brand name is mentioned, that negative experience and its impact on the consumer is brought to light. Right? So that is for brand history, heritage, and experience. So once that imagery has been created, Isaac, you said, how can a brand overcome such an image? It's through expert brand management, but particularly with strategic marketing communication activities. So they have to make targeted marketing communication decisions. Some people will go the route of PR and sponsorships. Some people will use promotions. Some people will go and do advertising with messaging to be able to change the imagery. So they will engage in consistent advertising that is communicating certain aspects of information that will help to change this imagery, right? But usually it is done through integrated marketing communication to try and change the mindset. Because remember, we said it is in the mindset and the heart of the consumers that the brand takes its flight or takes its life. Yeah, you're welcome, Isaac. So once the firm has been able to create this imagery for themselves, the next is to be able to create good brand judgments. And these are basically customers' personal opinions and evaluations about the brand. So the customer would usually form a judgment by putting together all the different performance and imagery associations that they have. So like we are saying, the Benz as a brand is known to have good performance. However, when it comes to the Benz 207, the imagery is not good. So even though the performance is good, because the imagery is negative, people would usually shy away from the brand, right? And because of that, consumers may make all types of judgments about a brand. But 4 main judgments are key when it comes to consumers deciding how to respond to a brand. And this includes, first of all, the quality of the brand. and which we have talked about in terms of specific attributes and characteristics and benefits that the brand provides. Next, we can talk about brand credibility, because if the brand is not trustworthy, if the brand is not perceived to have some kind of expertise and it's not likable, customers would not go ahead and make any decisions regarding this particular brand. In fact, it will not even come to mind when they are considering brands in a particular product category. In addition, the brand has to have good consideration, because if the customer does not perceive that the brand is relevant, they will not want to consider it. So firms have to make sure that their brand ends up being one of the brands that the customer would like to consider. And the customer would only consider the brand if they seriously think about that brand whenever they have a need for a product or service in the category that that brand belongs to. And this can only be achieved if the customer has judgment of superiority in relation to this brand as it compares with competing brands. Because for a brand to be able to stand out among the competition, they have to be able to be unique and be perceived to be better than those of other competing brands. So superiority as a dimension of brand judgment is something that marketers must always aim to achieve and communicate when it comes to their brand development strategies. So that is for brand judgment. And once we are able to influence the judgment of consumers concerning our brand, we now have to go ahead and tug at their heartstrings. Because so far we've been thinking about influencing the thought process of the consumer. But we have mentioned that the brand takes life through the consumer's thoughts and the way they feel, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Good, because it resides in their minds and hearts. So we cannot do everything and ignore their hearts. That is why brand feelings are important. And these are basically the emotional responses or reactions that consumers have towards a brand. So these feelings can be either experiential or immediate, thereby increasing in level of intensity as we continue to engage with the consumer. Or they could be private and enduring, and increasing in the level of gravity, right? So people will usually feel a particular way about a brand, but they will usually not talk about it. They will keep it inside and usually let that inform their decision making. But for others, it's more experiential, right? And therefore it is overt, such that they will exhibit the way they feel about a brand openly. And a typical example by which customers will usually do this open exhibition is through advocacy. Have you ever tried to have an argument with a customer who refuses to see reason because they have a particular affinity or love for a given brand? So regardless of how you argue, that customer would never change their positioning regarding that particular brand. The brand can do no wrong in their eyes.
iPhone users.
iPhone users. You can pass anywhere. Samsung users.
Yes, I happen to do some internship with Huawei Ghana, and some of the customers, they will tell you Samsung is the oldest phone their parents use, so they are okay with Samsung. No matter what you say, Samsung.
Good, because it's a long and enduring emotion that they have built over time. And it has not just been etched in their hearts, but also in their minds because of the imagery that has been created over the years, right? Which, as a result, has influenced how they perceive these brands. True. So very good examples. Leilatu says MPP and NDC supported. It's very interesting. And it is this affinity for the two brands that accounts, and it is this affinity that accounts for all the protests that we are having in Ghana recently. Have you realized? Have you realized that this brand feeling towards MPP and NDC is what has been leading to all these protests in recent times? Yeah. Right? Secondary school alumni, yes. Again, die-hard supporters.
Yes, Doc.
Right? This has taken a lot of us back to old school reunion days. and they're leading up to the old school reunion, where they come and sit on radio and they are talking about their schools and how their schools are better. Yes, House of Oak and Kotoko fans, which recently led to various clashes and fights. Right? Football teams in general, Mida, exactly. Right? So these are all practical exhibitions of brand feelings, right? Which have created certain elements that have contributed to brands having more than just a salience towards a particular brand, or some kind of performance or imagery, or some kind of judgment or feelings. But it has ultimately led them to be able to create lasting relationships in the form of brand resonance, right? So to be able to create these brand feelings, marketers have to be able to look at various dimensions, including creating warmth, creating fun. Warmth are usually the soothing feelings that make customers feel a sense of calm and peacefulness, right? And you realize that different brands have different feelings attributed to them. So when we talk about, for instance, you are referring to football teams a lot. You realize that a lot of these football teams are associated with excitement, isn't it? Because they make the supporters feel energized and they feel like they're part of something special, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
They also have fun associated with them because it's playful and lighthearted when team supporters are teasing each other, right? And singing together and supporting their teams. It has a fun component to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can also talk about feelings of security. And we can't talk about this when it comes to football teams, though, but we can talk about it in terms of other brands, like insurance companies and investment companies, isn't it?
Yes, though.
Good. Some people feel more secure when their deposits are with certain banks than others. Do you agree?
That's true.
Good. When the Ghanaian
Yes,
banking industry was going through a crisis, people were more than happy to move their deposits and funds to international banks like StanChart and EcoBank, believing that they offered more security. True or false?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
We can also talk about the feeling of social approval, which gives consumers a belief that others look more favorably on them and their appearance because they use a particular brand. So automatically, if you drive a Mercedes-Benz, you get a different level of social approval than if you drive a T.
But dog, I think that thing is going though. Now the firsts are pulling more of the benzos, so it's becoming some maybe.
The what?
The fraudsters.
Yeah. But
Scammers,
even with the
yes.
fraudsters,
The way they are
there's
pulling the benzo.
a certain class of Benz, right?
Okay.
You will not see them with the S classes and the E classes.
very true.
You see
Very
them
true.
with the C classes.
Yeah, the three classes.
Yes. You see them with the C classes. But for the S classes and the E classes, they are still.
They do.
They are
Their
still.
money can go there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, dog,
they
they
are.
do. When you even go to the gallery apartments where they mostly sleep, you see those cars, like they've really parked the S classes and E class. They really pull them off. The big ones, those who are pro in the game. The gallery apartments are easily gone.
It's so true. So now the Mercedes-Benz, me, for one, when I see it, the first thing that comes to my mind is somebody illegally got this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the Mercedes-Benz, I know, you have to be a pensioner to drive one.
Not necessarily. Mercedes-Benzes are not that expensive, you know. The C class, C250 is like how much? Is it? If you buy it from the home use people, currently it's about 130,000 Ghana cedis, I believe. It's not that much.
Okay.
So Equia can buy one. Nuruddin can buy one.
Amen.
Myself.
That I would buy one.
So
It has always been a dream car.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal, right? But like you said, because that class of people have taken it over, people's perceptions about it in terms of social approval, right, is going down. So someone would rather go and buy a well-respected Toyota car than to go and buy one of these C classes or a Mercedes-Benz for that matter, right? And again, we can also talk about self-respect. Some brands make consumers feel better about themselves. So currently, especially with certain classes of individuals, the MPs and the Land Cruisers, like one of your classmates rightly mentioned, that is why they are advocating for the loan to buy themselves the new cars, because it affects their self-respect if they do not have a Land Cruiser. Do you agree? The V8,
Yes,
yeah, right. It's a mark of self-respect for them to drive that kind of car. It's like the Slay Queens and the Range Rovers. Which particular? I think it's the Evoque, huh? Is it the Evoque or the Bella?
Yes, Evoque.
Yeah, the Evoque.
So if you're a Slay Queen and you want to have self-respect, you have to have a Range Rover Evoque or a Bella.
But Doc, it has the advantages and disadvantages.
I know, right?
Because if a normal person is in a V8 and a policeman wants to stop them, they assume there's a politician, so they don't stop.
Exactly.
They don't stop you. Yeah.
Right, because of this self-respect thing that we are talking about, right? So it speaks for itself. Isaac said, my brand. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm humbled. I'm humbled. Thank you so much, Isaac. Right? So these are brand feelings, and brands always have to do their best to ensure that they elicit these feelings, because again, we are moving up the CBBE model or the brand resonance model, and brand feelings are the closest at the top of the pyramid to resonance. And without having brand feelings, you cannot be able to convert all these top of mind elements, including judgment and imagery and performance, into an actual relationship, right? So once we are able to guarantee that we have been able to elicit certain strong and durable feelings among our target audience, we can go ahead and cultivate resonance. So this is basically the ultimate relationship and level of identification that a customer will have with a brand, right? And resonance is also characterized by the depth of the psychological bond that the customers have with the brand. So like I said, the bond is so deep and intense that the customer does not mind waiting for the brand when it is not available until it becomes available. They will not under any circumstance switch to any competing brand because of the intensity and depth of this relationship that they have with the brand, right? And when it comes to resonance, the depth of this intensity and relationship can be explained using 4 main categories. We can talk about behavioral loyalty, attitudinal attachment, the sense of community, and the active engagement. Now, in terms of behavioral loyalty, it is gauged basically in terms of repeat purchases. And like I said, the customer will consistently purchase the same brand over and over again, to the point where they will introduce it to their subsequent generations. So parents will introduce it to their children, who will also introduce it to their children, and then the tradition goes on, right? We can also talk about attitudinal attachment, where there's a strong personal attachment with the product. And this goes beyond having a positive attitude, but they basically view this particular brand as something special, something unique, something that offers them a benefit that they cannot get anywhere. And because of that, they are attached to their brand. And this, like we said, can be as a result of the consumer's own personal experiences or some kind of imagery that the brand has managed to create in the mind of the consumer. Again, we can talk about sense of community, right? And this is the social phenomenon in which customers feel a kinship or affiliation with other people who are associated with the brand. So you know that in Ghana, we have a BMW Drivers Association. Are you aware?
Yes, God.
Good.
Yes, we do.
Good. They have this community where they meet on weekends and they take drives. This is an example of a sense of community. We also have the Harley-Davidson riders community also in Ghana here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So good. So these are all examples of people who feel a sense of community. And have you realized that people who drive certain brands of cars tend to honk at each other on the road and flash lights at each other? Good. Sense of community. Right? UG alumni, good. Another example of sense of community. Old school members, people go to certain workplaces, they go to certain work interviews, and as a result of someone on the panel being part of their old school.
They're vandals.
They're vandals, right? That sense of kinship transcends everything, right? This is all part of the issue of sense of community that we are talking about. And then finally, we can also talk about active engagement. And this is where the customers will actively engage or invest their time, energy, money, and resources into the brand beyond those expended during the purchase or consumption of the brand, right? So this is where you will see the fans of the Big Brother Naija giving them money and cars.
Yeah.
They have watched the show has ended, but there's still active engagement going on, where they give them huge amounts of money. They spend their time to go and welcome them at the airport. They buy them cars. All of these things.
Flashy cars.
Flashy cars for that matter, yeah. These are all examples of brand resonance. So right now it's a relationship. SHS alumni, good. They finish school, they go back, they go and spend time with current students. They contribute money to be able to undertake projects in their old schools and commission these projects. All of these things are forms of active engagement, right? Which are a semblance of brand resonance, right? So we are saying that the building blocks are there for a reason. And for the firm to achieve this strong brand that we talked about from the beginning, they have to build from the base all the way from salience through to performance, imagery, judgment, feelings, and then ultimately resonance. So the firm cannot stop at any of these levels, because once they stop, they have not been able to achieve the ultimate aim of building a strong brand that has identifiable customer-based brand equity. So resonance is the ultimate aim, and you can't get to resonance without going through all these different building blocks that we have talked about. So with that understanding, this is a typical example of the brand resonance pyramid for a brand, and in this case, it is Heineken. And you realize that they have built all the way from the base, starting from salience, by first of all creating the unique green bottle and the red star, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and wherever you see that, you know it is the Heineken brand, right? Among other forms of salience elements like sharing good moments and friendship. And they also engage in huge advertising campaigns. Now, in terms of imagery, they project the imagery of being consumed by a typical young male, isn't it? And by highly sociable people and by party goers, which is very true. You see Heineken usually at a lot of parties. And in terms of performance, they have been able to position themselves as a universal premium lager beer with an iconic brand name. And also they have been able to project in terms of performance that they are a sustainable brewer, which is very important to a lot of consumers lately. People are looking out for sustainable brands, isn't it? Good. And in terms of feelings, they have been able to convince their users that they are fun, they evoke pleasure and relaxation, and they are trendy, right? It's trendy to drink Heineken. And in terms of judgments, they have been able to prove that they are superior in their category. They have become very recognizable, and they have been known as a trustworthy brand and a brand of good quality. And because of that, they have achieved resonance elements, including repeat purchase. They have a loyal following, and they have strong positive perceptions about their brand, including being associated with happiness and pleasure. So in building your brand, this is what you hope to achieve at the end of the day. By having specific elements of your brand being associated to the brand and its specific category, along the various levels of the brand resonance pyramid. And that is the only way that as a marketer, you can say that the brand that you represent is a strong brand. And that brings us to the end of the discussion on the customer-based brand equity model, also known as the brand resonance model. Now, in engaging in this brand equity building, the firm goes along what we refer to as the brand value chain. And this refers to the structured approach to assessing the various sources and outcomes of brand equity and how their marketing activities can create this brand value that they are looking for. Now, this brand value chain is consistent with the brand resonance model because it assumes that the value that is created ultimately resides in the mind and the heart of consumers. And value is synonymous with what the brand resonance model represents, in that customers would only be willing to form a relationship with the brand if they perceive that that brand offers some kind of value to them that they cannot get from any competing brand. True or false?
True.
Good. So there are various stages in the brand value chain that the firm has to go through to ensure that whatever activities they are engaging in relation to the customer result in ultimate value, not just for the customer, but for themselves as an organization and their stakeholders, including shareholders. So the brand value chain has 4 main stages, starting from the marketing program investment, which involves all the resources that the firm invests in developing marketing programs to communicate their value and create these associations to their brand at the different levels of the pyramid. Now, these marketing programs will only be effective if they are able to create some kind of program quality in order to influence the mindset of the customer. So if the marketing programs of the firm are not distinctive, they are not relevant, they do not communicate value and are not excellent, they will not be able to influence the customer's mindset. Now, this customer's mindset, like we said, is in the form of awareness, unique associations to the brand in the given product category, certain positive attitudes, strong attachments, and various positive activities, including word of mouth and actual purchase. Now, for this customer mindset, to translate into market performance for the firm, they have to ensure that there is a marketplace condition that is conducive enough to translate these customer mindsets into market performance. So these marketplace conditions include competitive reactions. That is why we as marketers have to be cognizant of the actions of our competitors at all times, because their actions can either do or undo our efforts by way of marketing program investment to influence customer mindset and the translation of these mindsets into actual performance. Again, we have to be cognizant of our customer size and profile, hence the importance of the STP process, like I mentioned earlier, as well as channel support, all of which will translate the customer's mindset into actual performance, including being able to charge price premiums, influencing price elasticities, gaining market share, being able to expand successfully, as well as being profitable and having a good cost structure. Now, market performance is baseless unless it is able to translate into benefits, not just for the firm, but also for other stakeholders of the firm, particularly shareholders. So for market performance to translate into shareholder value, we need to think about a multiplier that can help this market performance effectively translate into shareholder value. And these investor sentiments that we are talking about include market dynamics. Because if the market dynamics are not favorable, the performance will not automatically translate into shareholder value. Likewise, if the firm does not have adequate growth potential and the risks are high and the brand contribution is low, the market performance will not be able to translate into shareholder value. So investor sentiment as a multiplier is important if market performance is to translate into stock prices, PE ratio, and market capitalization, all of which will benefit shareholders in terms of creating value for their investments. So in that case, we have discussed the 4 stages of the brand value chain, starting from the marketing programs through to customer mindset, through to market performance, and then to shareholder value, all of which benefits from various multipliers, including the multiplier of program quality, which is necessary to move from marketing program investments to successfully influencing customer mindset, as well as the marketplace conditions multiplier, which needs to be conducive to enable the firm to translate the positive customer mindset into market performance, as well as the investor sentiment multiplier, which is necessary for the firm to be able to translate their positive market performance into shareholder value. So that being said, when it comes to branding and building customer-based brand equity, the firm goes through a number of stages, which is part of an overall process that is referred to as brand planning, which the firm has to go through to ensure that they are able to overall create and build a strong brand that can live and transcend time, such that as time goes on, the brand will not lose its relevance and will continue to elicit demand to be able to stay competitive and profitable for the firm and its shareholders. So like we talked about in last week's session, the brand has to first focus on the brand positioning model, where they emphasize the points of parity and points of difference between them and their competing counterparts, such that it will influence how they go about building their brand resonance through designing their activities to achieve salience, performance, imagery, judgments, feelings, and ultimately being able to establish a strong connection or relationship with the customers that they are targeting. And this will ultimately translate into the brand value chain model that will lead them to making sure that the marketing activities that they are engaging in building the building blocks of the customer-based brand equity model translates into influencing positively the customer mindset, which includes how they think and feel about the brand, which will then positively influence the firm's performance within the market. And that will translate into shareholder value for all the various people or organizations who have invested resources into the firm. And with that, we've come to the end of today's session. Another very interesting